Good Friday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock and time for Sports4CLE. Hope your weekend's off to a great start. Thanks for joining us. Preseason game number 1 for the Browns, the Hall of Fame game against the Jets. In the books, it goes down as a 5-point win, a nice comeback in the second half. After the game, Kevin Stefanski addressing his victorious team in the locker room.
That was fun to watch this team compete. Guys were flying around, okay? Offense, defense, special teams, it wasn't perfect, but guys were flying around, and we were competing, and I appreciate you guys. Take care of your body tomorrow. We're up and at 'em tomorrow. I appreciate you guys that competed like today, and let's hustle up and get the hell out of Dodge. We good with that? Hey, team on 3. 1, 2, 3.
So welcome in, Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Ashley, you know, none of the starters played. A lot of the backups didn't play, but you did see some good things. It shows you how deep this roster is.
Yeah, they sat 37 guys, and most of those people who sat are obviously starters or other key rotational players. So I think I made a joke, like, I know math. I know it's a 90-man roster, but it's like it almost would have been easier just to list the guys who are active that fans care about in this game. But I definitely thought for multiple guys that are going to be on this roster, we saw some good things. I thought Cedric Tillman, really promising that he only had to play the first half. I thought that was a really good thing, even though I really liked watching him play. You know, he had that really nice comeback route in the first half that kind of showed off his physicality, because what I like about Cedric Tillman, what I know the Browns like about Cedric Tillman, is he's physical in a different way than anyone else they have on this roster right now. And that route, I think you saw it perfectly, how he can create separation at the top of his routes. So I thought that was really good. I think everyone came away impressed with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who, in a perfect world, DTR is not going to be starting games for the Browns anytime soon, but I thought he looked confident out there, did some great things, threw the ball really well, knew what he wanted to do, made a key hustle play by blocking for Demetric Felton on his touchdown. All of those things were really good. And then I think the other story to come out of that game is Donovan Jones playing every single snap of that game. And part of that, I mean, most of it sounds like it was because of their tackle depth. They only had 3 available last night, but Donovan Jones's biggest issue coming into the NFL was his conditioning. We all watched him vomit on the sideline at rookie minicamp. He struggled during that to kind of catch his breath. OTAs, he told me after the game, were a big wake-up call for him once the other veteran guys got down there. So I do think, you know, I'm hesitant to make too big of a deal of his performance last night, but I think it was promising that he was able to play every single offensive snap. So those were 3 guys, I think, that you might see during the season that we saw a lot of good stuff from last night.
Well, Kevin Stefanski today met with media via Zoom, talked about Hall of Fame game, as well as what he saw from his team on the field.
Great day for you know, our organization, for the NFL. I was just again humbled to be a part of it. And then into the game, you know, like we talked about last night, was it perfect? No, never is. You got a lot of young players playing for the first time, but I thought the effort was outstanding. I thought all the guys were into it, cheering on their teammates, the guys that weren't playing, so much so that we got a 15-yard penalty or whatever the penalty was at the end. But a good night, a late night, up and at 'em early today. So we got plenty of work to do, and that's the beauty of training camp. It's August 4th. We got work to do.
And Ashley, you were down in Canton. You've been at training camp. What is a takeaway so far? I know it's early. You know what? It's what 8 days, 9 days, 10 days into it. What are some of the takeaways from what you have witnessed?
Yeah, I think my biggest one, especially after last night, is I'm curious to see how this defense is going to keep growing. I talked to Lance Reisland, who I believe you guys are going to have on after me, and Lance mentioned too that you know, it was like a very basic Jim Schwartz defense that we saw, and I still think there's so much room to grow because, of course, in these practices, yes, they're in pads now and there's more contact, but we're not seeing these guys actually like get after quarterbacks and be able to hit them. And of course, in the preseason, you're not like game planning the same way that you do in the regular season. You're not like creating matchups. You don't want to give too much away with your scheme. So I think there's still so much more to take away from this defense. But I think in the practices, especially when they have those first unit guys out there, I've seen like just about all of them make hustle plays. In the Greenbrier, gosh, I think Myles Garrett, you probably could have counted up with like 6 sacks over the last 2 days if he was allowed to hit Deshaun Watson in those drills. You've seen Dalvin Tomlinson make big plays, kind of do some nice reading of that offense and get some batted passes in practices. Zadarius Smith too. So I think for me, that's like the biggest takeaway is still about this defense. I think it's like one of the stories. And then the offense, obviously, I think the guys that we keep talking about for good reason are Elijah Moore and Donovan Peoples-Jones right now. I think Elijah has kind of shown what he can do and how effective he can be in different scenarios. I like the speed options they've been able to run with him so far. And Donovan, I think for a lot of people was a question mark coming into this season. You know, of course you have Amari Cooper still leading this room, but I think people were really curious how Donovan was going to respond. And it seems like he's just been kind of prone in a good way to connecting on some of these longer plays and practices. Of course, we didn't see either of those guys last night. We didn't see Deshaun Watson last night, but that's just from, you know, the 2 weeks or so of practices that we've gotten to see so far.
Yeah, the one thing is though, you mentioned Donovan Peoples-Jones, wide receiving room's a little beat up. We know Cooper's coming back from the core muscle injury, and he was slowed by tweaking something down at the Greenbrier. You know, Marquise Goodwin, you know, anytime I hear blood clots, that concerns me. Jalen Darden had a leg injury on Tuesday that didn't allow him to play. Dalen Baldwin went down. Kevin Stefanski talked about that injury and the depth of the wide receiving core earlier today.
Some good moments in that game. Obviously disappointing to turn the ball over twice. We turned the ball over on the first play of the drive twice, which was, you know, not very good. And we were fortunate to have the lead there being -2 in the turnover margin for a long time. So that's definitely going to be a point of emphasis for us is ball security, both when we're got it as a quarterback or we have it as a ball carrier, tight end, receiver, whatever it may be. You know, as you know, Mary Kay, with wide receivers and training camp, you're going to have guys in and out, and we'll adjust as necessary. You don't like to see anybody go down for any reason, but those are things that we got to just continue to work through here, both on the coaching side and on the personnel side.
Do you have to add anybody? Do you think Dalen will be out a little bit of time?
Yeah, Dalen unfortunately is going to be out, which is, you know, I feel for the kid. He's done so many good things for us over these months, but we'll add some players here over the next couple of days.
So actually, that's definitely something we're going to have to monitor. And again, they have the numbers at that position, but at some point in time, because of how they want to play, you start going, well, can we really afford to keep losing guys at wide receiver?
Yeah, it's still early enough in training camp that like the alarm bells aren't completely sounding for me, but like my antennas are going up a little bit, so to speak, because I talked about this, you know, when we were debating the whole should they sign DeAndre Hopkins idea, should they go after him? And part of my reason for why I thought, yes, they need to make every good faith effort besides his prior relationship with Deshaun Watson was the fact that last year we saw like the injury bug bite this receiver room really kind of consistently throughout training camp. And I do think it impacted some things they were able to do with the offense. So I am a little concerned already, even though a lot of these injuries are happening towards the bottom of the roster. You know, I think Marquise Goodwin is potentially a huge loss considering the kind of speed he can bring. You know, I think last night it was unfortunate. I think we've been talking about this, that there's been like a chance for a guy like Anthony Schwartz to kind of prove that he's improved and has a spot on this 53-man roster, knowing he brings speed as well. But then he fumbles that end around with his first look of the game. So I think that was unfortunate. Dalen Baldwin, I've been impressed with since last season. I thought he's made some great plays throughout camp so far. I know I put video out there of one catch he had during, I think it was 11-on-11 in the Greenbrier, where he caught the ball right by the left sideline, got both feet down and fell out of bounds. It was such an athletic play. It was almost Donovan Peoples-Jones-esque to me. So I think that's a big loss, even though it's a guy who, was competing towards the bottom of that roster. I think especially right now, when you're trying to see who gels really well with Deshaun Watson, I thought Dalen Baldwin was actually showing that a little bit, that he could connect with Deshaun Watson when he was out there. And I think just right now is not a good time to be losing your pass catchers, when I think one of the biggest keys for this training camp and this offseason in general is Deshaun Watson figuring out who he can throw the ball to in what situations and who his favorite targets are going to be. So I do think it's unfortunate they can't afford, I think, many more injuries there right now, or things could get kind of wonky here these final weeks of training camp.
One guy who has made most of his opportunities so far is Austin Watkins. They signed him after a successful season in the USFL. And then he caught a touchdown pass on a really nice play. He's impressed the Browns when given the opportunity.
You go from playing football right into playing football, and you haven't been on the street for a couple of years or a couple of weeks, whatever it may be. So I think he's certainly in playing shape, and his playing speed has been good. He's been impressive in the moments that he's had with us, and the game reps, and then practice reps. He's done a nice job. So again, he'll get plenty of opportunities with what happens with receivers. As we all know, you lose guys for a day or two or whatever it may be, and the guys that are available will continue to be able to show what they're capable of.
And like we have said, Ashley, there's now an opportunity to kind of open some. That's a good start. It was less than a week that he's been in camp and caught a touchdown pass.
That, I think, is exactly what you need to do as a receiver who is fighting for a roster spot, whether it's in his case, I'm sure he came into here thinking, well, it's an opportunity at the very least, even if I don't make the Browns 53-man roster, to kind of come out and show not only do I have all this spring film now, but I have potentially film from these preseason games. So Watkins did exactly what you want a guy in that position to do. He came out there, he made a splashy play, he did what he's supposed to do, and now because of these injuries, I think he has a legitimate chance to come out there and compete for a bottom of the roster spot, even though I think when he came in, it's kind of like, okay, it's depth right now in case they need it. Maybe he'll be on the practice squad, maybe they'll eventually waive him, and it's just a camp body, so to speak. But I really liked what I saw from him last night. And like you said, he hasn't been here long, so it's a small sample size, of course. And, we'll analyze him, I'm sure, more in these coming practices, that he's going to be one of these guys to kind of watch as this roster solidifies itself.
Before we go to break, I know you've written an article about, Donovan Peoples-Jones and just how he's approached. This wide receiving room has been upgraded pretty significantly in the offseason. Take us through that article and what you found out in talking to DPJ.
Yeah, I think Donovan is still just as quiet as ever when it comes to wanting to talk about himself. I've talked about this before. I covered him at Michigan. I think I've kind of worn him down a little bit over the years, that he at least will, he'll give me a chance to ask him some questions one-on-one. So I was glad to get a few minutes with him at the Greenbrier and try to delve into this, because I tried to get into it with him in January, knowing he was going to be extension eligible the last week of the season, that was coming up. And all he would kind of concede is that he really loves Cleveland. Cleveland feels like home. Anytime I tried to ask him a couple weeks ago when I talked to him at the Greenbrier about the extension, and if he wants to stay here long term, he just kind of brings up wanting to win as a team and do his job. And I think in a lot of ways, like, people might look at that and think, oh, it's player speak, so to speak. But for me, I'm like, that's just kind of who Donovan Peoples-Jones is. It's who he's always been. He's a quiet guy. He's shy. He'll talk more about music or fashion, I think, a lot of times than he wants to talk about himself. You hear his teammates talk about that. But I think that's what's made him so successful in the NFL. He's almost like an egoless guy. And we all know that receiver can be a very mercurial position in this league. And he doesn't really have an attitude. He's come in. He was like a top recruit in his high school class. He was the #1 receiver in the high school class of 2017. He went to college and took some bumps. He did not have the college career everyone thought. He still declared for the draft only after 3 years at Michigan. And he's come into the NFL and had to work. He was a 6th round pick. And I think that's just kind of emblematic of who he is. So to me, that when he says something like that, I really do believe that he means it. And he's just going out there every day and trying to do his job and trying to help the team win. And I think it's a smart approach, because ultimately it is going to be what decides his future. And, maybe to me, it's like his future in Cleveland is murky, right? Because another team could want to pay him more, could see a larger role for him than what could be available to him in Cleveland. But the fact that he isn't focused on that, is just going out there and working, I think he has an undeniable opportunity in front of him this season.
The other thing is he's proven he's an NFL quality receiver with what he's done with the Browns. So if it isn't here, somebody's going to give him some money to play wide receiver in the NFL. And you know what? It points to him for wanting to win. Ashley Bastock and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Outside break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Continue talking Browns. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, Dave. Howard from Marin County. Comments on tonight's game. It's late tonight. Anthony Schwartz and Cade both look like busts. Anthony should basically be cut tomorrow. Cade York looks like he's a head case. The positive side, DTR looks absolutely fantastic. I don't know if he's for real, but if he's for real, that would be amazing. The only thing I would worry about him in the long term is because he runs so much, he might have a lot of injuries. I think some of the other rookies look pretty good. I think Cedric Tillman, he looked pretty good. Some of the runners look pretty good. So I would say that past draft class from the people at the top have been terrible, but maybe this draft class for this year might be really good. So thanks a lot, Dave. Great show. Await your comments. Bye.
Appreciate all of the voicemails, as always. Ashley, I get the concern with Cade York. Kickers are just such a different thing. Yes, he has to start making his kicks. I'm not ready to call him a bust just yet. I mean, he's got to make his kicks. The kickoffs are really good because they're usually out of the back of the end zone. But yeah, he can't keep missing field goals.
Yeah, last night I actually know when it was after Anthony Schwartz fumbled that end around. I tweeted, and it was definitely my most popular tweet of the night, that Cleveland Sports Talk Radio is about to be wild for the next few days. And I think I've seen that already. I know my friend Ken Carmen, I saw a tweet from him this morning that someone called in to 92.3 The Fan and was advocating that the Browns should try to trade Nick Chubb for Justin Tucker. Which, look, like, I'm always like, this is peak overreaction in the preseason for me. And, with Anthony Schwartz, I think there are some legitimate concerns at this point, right? He's in year 3. I think the Browns have been great about acknowledging, like, the mental health issues he tried to work through last year after, dropping the ball a lot in the preseason and having to try to work past that. But when you're in year 3 and still making the same mistakes, I think it's concerning, and you start to wonder what the role is going to be for a guy like him. With Cade York, I've said it, I wrote it last night, I'm not getting too up or down about anything that Cade York does this preseason. I think that was a bad first impression for his second year to come out and miss a 49-yard kick, especially because half of his kicks last year, he had 10 misses. 5 of them came from between 30 and 49 yards out, which as an NFL kicker, that's where you're going to make your money, essentially. Those are the money kicks. And, it's great that he can make some long 50-plus yard field goals, but you really do have to find consistency there. Now, when I say I'm not going to get too high or too low, last year during camp, he was the story of almost every camp day, making like 50, 60-yard kicks, one after the other, very few misses. But the true test for him, I think, is going to come when the actual season comes around. Number one, kicking in Cleveland Browns Stadium, the conditions there when it's windier, all that stuff. But number 2, how he's going to phase out his mechanics. Because he talked about that last year. He told me that again in the spring, that he feels comfortable with that plan, that he was too focused on it, and he needs to just kind of let his body take over, his muscle memory take over during those key kicks. So I'm the first to admit that was not a good look last night, but I still don't think it's time to panic on Cade York. Just like if he made every kick last night, I wouldn't think, yes, he fixed what he needs to fix, because I think the true test is going to come in the season for him, because that's where his biggest struggles happened last year.
Yeah, and for the Browns to be as good as they expect to be, they're going to need their field goal kicker to be consistent. There's going to be some pressure kicks that you're going to have to win the game. So yes, it's a bad first game for him, but it is a preseason game. And I know fans' reaction is, well, he wasn't any good last year, and I get it. Yeah, he's got to be better. Sione Takitaki, we see him going through drills and tackling and doing stuff from his ACL rehab. I know you wrote an article about him. Take us through what you found with him in that article.
I was really excited to talk to Sione Takitaki, and again, that was a one-on-one interview that I was able to do down in the Greenbrier, because he's such an interesting guy to me. He kind of went from a run stopper to last year because of the slew of injuries in the linebacker room, and an every down kind of player. And I thought what was so impressive about him is he kind of showed that athleticism that we're used to seeing from a guy like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. He was like sideline to sideline a little bit. And I don't know, that's what I thought that Takitaki was going to be coming into last season. But he was playing, having a career year before he tears his ACL against Houston on a special teams play of all things. And originally, when we talked to him in January, he had surgery at that point. It seemed like he was on track for a September or October return. He said he feels like he's a little bit ahead of that initial schedule now. We talked a lot about the mental aspect of, dealing with that injury during a contract year for him. He, left some money on the table. He's the first one to admit that. And about the opportunity that's ahead. Right now, at least at the time that I talked to him, he was every other day was the plan out in practice during those Greenbrier practices. Their practice schedule is a little different now. Every other day in individual drills. He's still working up towards those team drills, so has a little bit of a ways to go. But now, I think it's interesting. He seems to think and be very motivated that week one could potentially be on the table for him. It's not a hard timeline. Season-ending injuries are fickle. This is the first real, true season-ending injury he's had to deal with, so that's been a lot. But I do think it's very promising, at least, that that's a possibility, because when he first injured that, again, it was looking more like it might be an October return for him, which I thought was really unfortunate.
Well, another guy this guy, the Browns are probably even counting on more, Anthony Walker. You wrote an article about Walker as well. Take us through that one.
Yeah, Anthony Walker has been great, I think, in sharing with me about what his torn quad tendon, what that experience has been like for him over almost the last, it's been 11 months now. And he talked to us at training camp at the Greenbrier again, and just about going through that injury. He's on a similar path, it seems like, towards Takitaki, both of them right now in individual drills, not in team drills. And for me, it was interesting. He said each day is getting better because he feels like he's getting more comfortable out there. He has this new appreciation for the game. And he's a guy who always, went out there enthusiastically, gave his all. But when you go through an injury like that for the first time, you can't help but come out of it, I think, appreciating every snap you're going to play even more. And for me, why I was hopeful, I wrote a column about this as free agency started and why I thought they should bring Anthony Walker Jr. back, was because he's such a communicator. I joke, it's never hard to find AWOC because he's the one that's out there talking. He never shuts up, is what Jacoby Brissett told me last year. Those two are very good friends going back to when they were both on the Indianapolis Colts together. But I just think he's a key guy when you're installing a new defense. We haven't gotten into all the green sticker talk yet on this defense. I don't know if he would be the green sticker guy because he hasn't been in team reps. But he's definitely a key communicator. And I think he's a key part of this defense, even if he's not going to put up crazy sack numbers or anything like that, right? He's going to put up a lot of tackles probably, and he's a pretty good run stopper. But more than anything, he's great at telling other guys what they're supposed to do, when they're supposed to do it, and keeping everything kind of organized around him.
Before I let you go, they'll get back at it in Berea for training camp, getting ready for Washington coming up next weekend. What are you looking for? What do you pay attention to as we move into the second week of training camp?
with all these injuries to receivers, I mean, I'm going to really be watching at who is stepping up there, especially these younger guys. Again, when you lose a Dalen Baldwin, Jalen Darden being out potentially, it's like these are guys that you're curious to see, okay, who's going to come up behind them? Who might get a chance to get some reps with Deshaun Watson? Who's going to make some interesting catches? That sort of stuff, I think for me is going to be the biggest thing in this week of training camp, and especially when we get into those joint practices against the Philadelphia Eagles in a couple weeks. Like, who's going to jump out in those, I think, is going to be a key thing in the next couple of weeks here.
Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Ashley.
Thanks, Dave.
Ashley Bastock, make sure you check her out. Really good stuff. Browns beat reporter, Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we are joined by Lance Reisland. He will take a video analysis film breakdown of some of the young players from last night in the Hall of Fame game. Straight ahead on Sports for CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Browns with a win over the Jets Hall of Fame game, as we told you yesterday. Thought it might be a good idea to take a look at how some of the younger guys looked. Film breakdown, video analysis. Whenever we do that, we welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. It wasn't always perfect, Lance, but there were some young guys in particular that flashed some good things last night.
Had a bunch of guys on both sides of the ball that really played well. I think you got a good look at what they're going to try to do moving forward in terms of scheme. So they're going to, I thought the defense did a really good job of being basic, but lining up and playing fast. I saw the secondary play some man coverage, but they played from an off position and an on position. You saw some guys penetrating. You saw some guys that were flying around. It was a very good indication of how hard they're going to play. And then offensively, I thought I thought obviously DTR played really, really well. But I thought their operation was very well. They're in and out of the huddle. They understood what they were doing. They lined up. They had a couple issues, pretty understandable for this early in the season. But I thought they did a really good job of the operation, getting in and out, and being successful that way. So
the first clip we're going to take a look at, this is a linebacker that is almost a forgotten guy, Tony Fields. What did you see from him?
So this is a great clip because it kind of gives you more than just Tony Fields. So first thing you're going to see is the secondary there in press coverage. So the slot down here at the bottom, right above the second 9, he's a little bit off, so he can play the run and the pass. So what that does is it gives them 8 men in the line of scrimmage. Next, you're going to see the linebacker that walks up at the beginning of the clip. That's Tony Fields. Now, as he walks up, Ronnie Hickman also walks up. So basically, you get an 8-man box with 1 free safety deep. Now, they're going to run a simple zone here, but by Alex Wright getting penetration, he messes it up. And by messing it up, it screws up the double team, and the double team actually goes to Hickman. And that double team is supposed to go to Fields, who's the number 1 linebacker to the play side. But because they have so many guys in the box, and because they're showing, and because of Alex Wright's penetration, Fields gets to run free. And this is what you're going to see from those linebackers. Because of that penetration by those defensive linemen, these guys are able to run free. So this is a very good look at a total team defense, some wide techniques, very basic, but guys running around, celebrating. This is kind of what you're going to see. This is a good look at what you're going to see a lot from a Schwartz defense this fall.
And you mentioned they walk a number of guys up. You can't really tell which guys are coming, which guys are going to drop off as well. This second clip, we flip things to the offensive side of the ball. And Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he looked good.
So a couple things about this angle I really, really like. So first of all, he had great control, right? So he was able to use his feet in the pocket, very accurate from the pocket. He used his feet outside the pocket. He scrambled very well. What this does for me is DTR allows them to keep their offense the same whether he's in or not, whether Watson's in or not. I'm sorry. So when he is in the game, So what that means is that at practice, they're able to practice all the same stuff because he has the same skill set. Now, he's not the level of Watson at this point in his career, but he has the same skills from in and outside the pocket. Now, if you look at this play here, I really, really love this pass Watkins, is he moves the entire defense with his eyes. So as the play starts, you're going to see that entire defense move to his right because his eyes go right. And his eyes go right in the NFL, it doesn't take much, and then he creates that great line. And Watkins ran a great out here to get open, but this is great fundamentals in the pocket, great use of his eyes. He understands what he's seeing in front of him. You're going to see the right tackle, who I'm talking about next, Donovan Jones, does a great job. That offensive line creates a great pocket. And this is what DTR did all night. Again, in the pocket, out of the pocket, using his feet. I thought he was very, very good.
Yeah, look at about the 12-yard line at the beginning of this clip, and there's the safety that you see, and he's cheating over because of where DTR's eyes are. That's a nice job in your first pro game. Had a couple of touchdown drives. You mentioned the next guy that we're going to look at, Donovan Jones, played every snap. I thought he looked pretty good.
So 70-plus snaps, 35 pass attempts, 0 pressures. The thing that you really like about this guy is that he uses his size. Now, I was down at camp on Tuesday, and I tweeted out a thing, and there's big in the NFL, and now that I've been there, and then there's really, really big. And I have never really stood next to a human this big, and he not only is big, but he uses this wingspan, so he's able to just get that wingspan out here. So two things he has. First of all, he has the size, but he has really, really quick feet, so he's able to get in these kick steps really, really fast. Now, as he gets back in the kick step, he basically creates a wall, and all the techniques that he doesn't have yet, he'll learn. But simply by having quick feet and getting back, his size allows him to not allow any pressure whatsoever. And again, the clips I really like, this is another really good clip by DTR. He reads that they drop, he cover 2 to this side, and he hits it right in the hole. Really good throw. This is actually, I believe Mond in the first half. Yeah, this is Mond. Really, really good throw. So by creating that great pocket, these quarterbacks were able to go through the reads and do good things. But Donovan Jones did a great job all night of pass protecting. He did some good stuff in the run game. His pass protection is at a very, very high level because he's such a massive human.
And we realize, look, 4th-round pick, these are guys that are backups and third-teamers, but it's what you want to see first time out in a, in a live setting from Donovan Jones. So still a lot of stuff to work on, but a good first step.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And those guys, and he brings such a different dynamic. He's going to do things differently. It's kind of the Orlando Brown. I wrote an article earlier this year about him and Orlando Brown. He's able to do things differently because of his size. So he can invite people into his chest because he's so massive, it's hard to push him vertically backwards. And because he can get backwards so fast in those kick steps, he makes it really, really hard because you cannot get around him with the speed rush. He's too big. Really, really impressed by him. I think the thing on him, what was his passion for football? We saw last night, he was pretty passionate. He did a really, really good job. I think sometimes that's overrated, and they break down those draft picks so much. When you watch him on film last year, he's really, really good the entire season. He doesn't give up any pressure. So I think the Browns got a really good pick here. He's just a really, really good pass protector, and that size allows him to move people in the run game.
So the other thing, there's some concern about who's going to be the running back 3. Demetric Felton and really John Kelly both looked pretty good.
So liked them both. Here's a great clip of all these guys doing that I thought had great games. Felton, it was just nice to see him in the mix. Being at practice last year, he'd be with the running backs, he'd be returners, he'd be with receivers. He kind of didn't have a position. Now that I think Hunt is not with them, now they need that back who can get out of the backfield. He saw that last night. He's a little bit undersized, but you saw some twitch and some suddenness and some explosiveness from Felton that he had coming out of UCLA, and I really, really thought he did a really, really good job. So on this play, you get a great jump cut back to the backside here. What you see is Donovan Jones. He at the start of the play, he's going to close everything down. And just by being so massive, big 74 just kind of collapses that side of the line of scrimmage. And then you see DTR. So not only did he throw a wall from the pocket, outside the pocket, he played with great poise, and he has the intangibles. This is just a football play. He just makes a huge block here on the touchdown run, and he did a lot of those things. And a lot of those things that you do like that make you really, really endearing to your teammates, knowing that you'll put yourself on the line. This guy's trying to make the team, and he laid it all out there last night. Really, really happy for Felton. I thought he showed what he can do, and he actually got some work. He actually got some substantial work to show what he can do, and I thought he looked great. I thought Tillman, the receiver, did some good things as well, but I thought these three guys really stood out. These four guys really stood out, and these three guys on offense really did a great job.
That run right there showed a little bit of savvy by Felton, because he's running. He's not going to run into the line, but he's setting it up to bounce it out. Pretty good vision and patience. If you can be patient as a young running back, that's a really good skill to have.
Well, they did a really good job last night. They were simple. So they ran some zone and they ran some duo schemes. Nothing, they didn't pull. So they're a big gap team too. I think Donovan Jones will be very good in the gap game because of his size. He can wash down that line of scrimmage to his side. But Felton just looked like he had been around. He looked like, he's a guy who never pouts when you see him at practice. He's always working, always has a smile on his face. Last year, he did lots of really, really good things at receiver. I think he's a guy like Moore that you can put in the slot. You can do a lot of things with him. We all know in the NFL, it's a war of attrition. Guys are going to get hurt. You need good depth. You need guys who are sudden, can get those easy yards that we always talk about. And I think Felton's a guy who can do that both out of the backfield, in the slot, those jet sweeps, fly sweeps, use him on speed option. You can do a lot of different things with him because of his versatility. So I thought he looked really good. I thought the operation looked good. They did a really nice job. They got some things to clean up, but it's really early. I thought they looked good on both sides of the ball.
Obviously, an area of concern, the special teams, and this last clip that we're going to take a look at, the return team, the coverage team on the kickoff return.
So I watched a lot of film. I watched this today. I've watched it 3 or 4 times, just kind of going back and just watch the special teams or just watch the offensive line. And special teams, really, really 2 things. One is they gave up a kick return, they gave up a punt return, and then Cade York missed a field goal. Now, I will tell you, Stefanski said today that he was not worried at all, and I have to agree with Coach Stefanski. He needs to do it in a game, but if you watch him in practice, Cade York works so hard in practice, and he's never even close to missing. So he's just got to flip the switch, and hopefully it happens. Now, as a coach, I want to see it on the game, and I know all the fans do as well, but I think it's coming with him. These return units are hard to get going because they're not live yet. So as much as I want to criticize this, I hope it's just they haven't had live reps yet, but they really got to shore up that coverage to play complementary football. You don't want to put your defense in a bad situation. You don't want to put your offense in a bad situation by not making points when you get a good drive. Those are pillars for an offense when you don't get points after a good drive. So these special teams got to get cleaned up. Watching Bubba been throwing at practice on Tuesday, I can't wait to go back on Sunday and watch him because he's energetic, and I think he's gonna, whatever problems they have, he's gonna clean up. But this was an area of concern. They had a tough night on special teams, and I look for a big jump in this phase of the game in their next game.
Yeah, and it's the quote-unquote week 0 game that the Jets and the Browns are the only ones that play. So if it continues, you're obviously concerned right now. Special teams is usually lagging a little bit behind because, like you said, they don't get the live reps. You're still kind of piecing together who's going to be on that unit.
Watching the one thing that you liked about the special teams unit, they were in bad lanes on those coverage units, but it wasn't an effort thing. And I think this time of year you're looking for effort. Can you get off that double team on the jammers? Can you, because they're not scheming up punt rushes. So it's really come down to coverage units, making sure you're getting to the right spot, getting to your guy, and are you hustling? A lot of the guys on these units are going to be guys who aren't starters and are dying to make the football team. So you're looking for maximum effort. And when you watch those teams, it was physical mistakes, not effort mistakes or not mental mistakes in terms of not giving it their all. They just were out of line. They just were out of position, and a lot of it had to do with almost being too aggressive on the coverage unit. So they'll get those things cleaned up. They'll watch it on film. They'll see where they need to be. As long as they're giving great effort, that's what special teams is at any level. Effort, and it's consistency, and it's doing it over and over, and I think those guys will get it for sure.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out. Really good film analysis, video breakdown, cleveland.com, as well as the Plain Dealer. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Brad Ward, straight ahead, Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns here on Sports for CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. The final score in preseason doesn't really matter to me, but individual performances really do matter, especially for the bottom of the roster players and rookies. I gotta say, DTR looks very athletic and can swing it. He was able to lead a game-winning drive. I could definitely see him overtake Mon for the QB3 position. And one last thing, can we please cut, release, dismiss, whatever verb you want to insert there for Anthony Schwartz? He fumbled again after taking a pretty routine tackle. I mean, this guy can't hold on to the ball. I'm sorry. Barry is going to have to cut Anthony Schwartz. Thank you. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report, as well as the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. And Brad, Anthony Schwartz is just, he's not putting it together when you need. He needs to be really, really good, and that is going to put him in a bigger hole. And yeah, I mean, last thing in the world you want to see from Anthony Schwartz is another fumble.
Yeah, it feels like, I mean, literally the last thing I remember last year in the preseason was them forcing the ball to him to try to get him some confidence, and he couldn't bring it in. And then the first time he gets the ball this preseason, he puts it on the ground. It's just maybe football's, just not his thing, right? Like, I mean, he can run, he's fast. It's just that doesn't make you necessarily an NFL football player. And I think that's almost kind of where we're at with this, Dave.
Yeah, I would agree with you. DTR looked great. We'll see. Really vanilla offense, really vanilla defense. But having said that, it's what he's supposed to do. He did what he's supposed to do if he's an NFL quarterback.
He looked so comfortable. Like, my expectation was like, I didn't just come out, get in and out of the huddle, do the small things right. And he looked so comfortable. He communicated well. He got in and out of the huddle. There's no penalties for delay a game. And then once he got out there, he just looked like the game slowed down for him. I mean, already, like, he just looked so smooth. He's a playmaker. He's very electric, right? Like, and played with a lot of passion. Made some really good throws, some good runs. Really exciting guy that we will get to see a lot here over the next few weeks, I think.
Yeah, definitely a guy you want to see more of and see how he develops. The Browns did make some roster moves today over the past several minutes. Take a look. They have signed linebacker Cam Bright, tight end Miller Forrestall, and wide receiver Jalen Wayne. They waived Dalen Baldwin with an injury designation. Thomas Graham with an injury designation as well. They also waived Nate McCrary, Joseph Charlton, and Hunter Thedford on the tackle. So again, the injury to Baldwin, unfortunate for him. Kevin Stefanski talked about that earlier. The concern is, they're getting some wide receiver depth issues just in terms of having enough bodies to go out.
They are, and it's unfortunate because they have a bunch of talented guys in that room where they really did, and Dalen Baldwin was one of them. This feels like getting rid of the injured guys and bringing in some healthy bodies to keep 90 healthy guys or close to it around, right? Like, these guys aren't critical players. If they're not going to be out on the field, then they're going to go get guys that can. Unfortunately for Thomas Graham and Dalen Baldwin, who I thought, maybe had a shot, an outside shot at this roster, that the injury ends their shot this year, at least with the Browns. So, and they'll bring in some healthy bodies there too. I think they worked out a tackle today too, as well. So
yeah,
that makes sense that they.
Derek Kelly, big 6'5", 320-pound guy. Yep.
And I think they signed him too, where he's going to stick around. So that makes me feel a little bit better, because it's not that DeJuan Jones didn't play great last night, and James Hudson had his moments too. But, I don't think that you want them to be the first guys coming off the bench right away on this team. So adding a little depth there. He's played for a number of teams, so that's good stuff.
All right. Another area where you're always kind of listening and looking out for is that third running back. I liked what I saw from Demetric Felton and John Kelly as well. Are you less concerned about RB3 after those two went out and did what they did? Again, I know it's backups. I know it's vanilla. Are you less concerned?
I am, actually. The first thing I said in the post-game show last night is I'll stop complaining about running back 3 for at least a week, right? John Kelly just is good every preseason, right? Like he's just a good football player. And what was really good and refreshing was Felton's opportunity that he was given, and he looked explosive. He looked quick. And more than in the past, I thought the difference in the way he ran last night, and I thought he was really impressive, was less dancing, right? Like he's got that great speed and that great ability to like blow past people. And it was kind of like he was putting his foot in the ground and getting upfield one cut. And he looked really good. Like I was happily surprised. And I am done. Yeah, I will stop questioning running back 3 for the moment, right? Like, I feel like they have a couple guys there that are good enough to fill that role. They have to tap them due to injury, and let's hope not. But either way, they both looked very good.
So they ran a little bit out of the shotgun. What did you see, and your thoughts on that?
So, shotgun run is going to be huge for them this year, right? Like they have to be able to do it successfully. And the number is a little skewed from last year, where it says they were very successful at it, but it was kind of a bunch of chunk runs, right? So last night was a really good sign as far as their success from running from shotgun, because what that opens up offensively for Watson when he is in there, and you saw it when DTR gets in there, is so much more as far as like the RPO game and what they can do off of being able to run the ball out of the shotgun. So if they can do that successfully and continue to do what they did, and there were some changes in kind of the scheme that made them a little bit more difficult to predict running out of the shotgun, some inside zone instead of the wide zone and some different things like that, right? That they looked much smoother doing than when they tried to do it last year. That will make them a better offense when Watson's out there, whoever's out there, because they will be less predictable. The run looks more like the pass, and there's so many things they can do off of it with a quarterback that can run.
Yeah, it creates a real dilemma for your linebackers. You can't go all after Nick Chubb or whomever, because if that running back pulls it, you're in trouble. Did you get a sense of what the offense could look like with Deshaun Watson, and did you like what you saw?
I liked what I saw, especially obviously when DTR was in there, because he executed it much better. But it was very vanilla, right? And I don't know if we have a feel of exactly what, like, we didn't really get to see any of the fun stuff, right? The fun wrinkles, because they're not going to show you any of that yet. You get a little sense of it. Like, I think there's a little bit of a misnomer out there that, like, it's going to look like the air raid or something, right? But in the NFL, that's just not how things are. It's, the most of the time, 11 personnel is like the most wide receivers you get on the field, unless it's a really special situation. So it's more going to be about volume of passing and volume of running, and that I'm not really sure if I have a handle on yet. I feel like they've left enough breadcrumbs that I think they're going to throw it a lot more than they did in the past. boy, they ran it so well last night, and you wonder what's going to happen. It's just I still a little bit of kind of up in the air of what exactly it's going to look like. But I'm glad that the main thing for me last night, and the main thing that people should take away, I think, and I can't take all ownership of this. This is from me listening to other smart people talk too. So, but the main thing was people running from the shotgun, or their ability to run from the shotgun opens up so much more, and it looked so much better than when they attempted to do it last year. It's a really good sign for the future.
The other thing, one guy that jumped out in the first half was Cedric Tillman. Every time I see this guy, he just looks like he's an NFL receiver.
You said it. You took the words right out of my mouth. I have it written down right in front of me here. NFL receiver right away, right? Big body. The one play stands out, right? Like, and it looks like an offensive pass interference when you at first glance, but when you break it down, the guy is hanging on for dear life because he has him beat right off the line of scrimmage. He does the right thing. He swipes his hand away. The guy goes flying 10 yards by. Not only does he stop, settle down, present himself well to the quarterback, but then starts to move upfield, presents a target so that he catches it while moving forward and gets like 10 yards of yak because of it. So, like, doing the little things right in his first NFL appearance under the lights, all that stuff, he was really impressive. He looked, like you said, he looks like an NFL receiver right away and a guy that could help right away. So, very, very encouraging stuff from him.
The other thing in camp, it seemed like continuously in 11-on-11 drills, he was a guy that when Watson or DTR or whomever, fill in the blank, got out of the pocket, he was really, he knew exactly what to do and had a feel. He had that feel for when a play breaks down.
He does. And he has some nuance to his game that you can't teach, right? Like some of that feel, like you said, that when there is an opening, he can kind of sense it and sit down. You saw it in his first catch. He was able to kind of sit down in the middle of the zone, a bunch of guys around, and he sat down perfectly and made a nice catch. Now, he's going to get a lot of opportunities. I think you should give him all the opportunities you want here in the preseason to continue to let him to get a feel for the game and the game speed. But first impression is terrific, and I think you said that perfectly. Like, I think it's like he just has kind of a knack or you know, like I said, nuance to playing the wide receiver position that is difficult to teach people, and it kind of comes naturally to him, and you can see that in his game.
Well, you know, Dad played in the NFL, so he's used to being around the game. That has to be some of it. Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report, All Eyes on Cleveland podcast tonight. I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report and the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, love the show. Long-time viewer. Often I call in and comment. I just have a couple quick things about the game last night. Great game. I know it's preseason. Most of these guys ain't even going to be in the NFL in a month, but level of 1 to 10, what's your concern for Cade York missing one field goal? I know it's just one, but, you know, from last year to this year. And then what about that little receiver? I think it's Watkins or Watson. That guy's fast, and he seems to catch everything they threw at him. So what's your guys' opinion? I think the Browns are going to have a good year. I think Kevin Stefanski is finally going to be able to open playbook, and we're going to see what all the hype was about when we hired him. Just want to hear your guys' thoughts. Go Browns. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Brad, I guess I'm about a 5 with Cade York. I'm not really concerned yet, but if this team's going to be as good as they think they are, you can't go down and miss field goals. And Watkins is a guy I'm intrigued by. you know, with everybody banged up, he's gonna get a look, and he hasn't done anything not to like so far.
No, he hasn't. I'll say, listen, I think I'll say 6. I'm a little more concerned about York, right? Like, this is a year that you cannot mess around. Like, this is the year you can be like, oh, it's okay, we drafted him. Let's, let him figure it out. Like, this is not, he needs to figure it out now. Like, I was really hoping he would go out there and stripe that first one down the middle and be like, okay, cool. But, it's a 6, but it's fluid. I'll say that. I'm a little concerned, right? Especially because, and I don't want to make too big a deal out of this, but they never brought another kicker in for competition, and usually they at least do that to just do it, right? And they kind of are, I don't know, maybe treating him with kid gloves a little bit, like, hey, we don't want to, spook him with competition. We're going to, not even bring in a guy, and they may be regretting that a little bit right now. Not that it's time to panic or anything, but still. And then as far as Watkins goes, Sammy's cousin. So, yes, he is related to Sammy Watkins. And he, looked great. He looks quick. It was a really good route down near the end zone in the red zone there. He's done all the things right so far. He's flashed in camp a little bit. So good guy to have around, especially with the bodies that are kind of dropping like flies right now in that room.
So last night, first chance to look at the revamped Jim Schwartz defense. What'd you think?
I was happy, really. Very vanilla, like not going to show anything exotic, right? But it's never really going to look like that. That's not what the wide 9 is, really. Like, they will do eventually like some simulated pressure stuff where they're going to bring blitzes from one area and drop guy in another area. It's just kind of a way to still bring 4, but blitz, or bring 5, but blitz from a different area where they're not expecting. So they will do a lot of that. But what I was really happy with was, he's talked so much about the attitude and the moxie, and we want our defense to play with the most swagger and all this stuff, right? And, there was a moment in the second half where I really, kind of saw that. I thought that before I get into that, I'll say the linebackers I thought were impressive. I thought they played the run well. I was happy, surprised with Fields. I thought he had a pretty good game. And even Diabate, who didn't tackle well, but he was around the ball to make plays, right? And I think he eventually will finish those. So he is a guy who's a UDFA who has an outside shot, maybe, at making this team. Watching him, they looked fast to the ball. Ika looked good. I mean, there was the young guys flashed, right? And I'll say the moment that I really kind of got excited about this defense, because this is something definitely to watch, right? Is the difference from last year to this year in their identity, right? And I kind of saw it for the first time, and I know it's just a preseason game, but in the second half, they had just scored a touchdown to get back in the game. DTR drove them right down the field, right? And they got like a nice gain on first down. Bubba Bolden came up and made a terrific angle tackle, stopped the guy a couple yards short. Then Isaiah Thomas made a terrific individual play to get a sack right after that. And then Cam Mitchell, on third down and long, came up the sideline and made a great PBU right in front of the Browns sideline, and they were fired up. There's stuff flying everywhere. There was guys jumping around. So you can kind of see that, like, what Schwartz is pushing on them, like that intensity, the moxie, the swagger, because they were fired up after that play. And that was kind of like the first time I was like, yes, that's kind of like what we want to see, and how much easier it is to enjoy and root for a defense that has an identity like that.
Yeah, again, you want to see the fire, and that was something you and I talked about a lot last year. Take a look at this. This is a Siaka Ika, third-round pick, defensive tackle, and he's kind of shadowed there. And this is a guy taking on a double team and also getting to the ball carrier. How many times last year have we said, man, we don't have any defensive tackles that take on double teams? So again, Tomlinson's a guy that can do that. This, again, it's early, but that play by Iko was like, I saw that, Brad, and I said, yes, that is what we need to see more of.
It was a breath of fresh air. As soon as we saw that play, it was like, oh my gosh, like that was just so good to see, right? Like, and he just put, I mean, the way he anchored up front there, and they did a pretty good job anchoring up front in the run game all night, like which actually kind of opened up the linebackers being able to shoot upfield and make tackles. I thought they did a pretty good job against the run. You know, for all the young guys being out there, it was kind of fun to watch them figure it out a little bit, and happily surprised with the linebackers. You know, so there's kind of an area of concern, and I know these are guys that aren't going to be out there necessarily all the time, but I think that you know, Fields was impressive. And that's a good thing because you need some depth there. I thought he played well. One interesting note, no Jacob Phillips out on the field last night. I thought of all the list of guys that didn't play, he was the one that jumped out to me like, he should probably be out on the field in my opinion. But I haven't been at camp, so maybe Schwartz likes him more than I do or whatever. So we don't know what the story is necessarily there, but kind of jumped off the page to me.
Yeah, the other thing, you know, let's see how they build on it. You know, it was a good first step. Let's see what step 2 is. Brad Ward, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Brad.
It's so much fun, Dave. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Brad Ward, Orange and Brown Report, All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Always great Browns insight. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here Monday at 4. Have a great night, a great weekend. We'll see you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.